Hi friends, today we'll draw this cheerful portrait together from the very first sketch to the final texture. I'll also share a few simple tips on how to speed up your workflow and add more playfulness and texture. So let's get started. I start with a simple oval for the head, mark the eye position, add the body, two flying breads, a bow, one simple arm and fingers. Then I sketch the cat, head, ears, body, and the frame. At the end, I add the tail and the second arm. I lower its opacity, create a new layer above it, and draw a cleaner sketch. At this stage, don't aim for perfection, think of it as a more detailed sketch. Now I lower the sketch opacity again, create a new layer above it, and draw the final clean lines. Here they are. I rename the character layer to lines, and above it I create a new layer called frame. Drawing the frame on a separate layer will save you a lot of work later. This time I don't use a perfect shape tool, I keep the frame slightly uneven to highlight the hand-drawn feel. Now I adjust the shape using Liquify and Distort. When I'm happy, I duplicate the layer, scale it slightly, and merge both layers together. At the end, I adjust the characters so they fit perfectly inside the frame. Below the line art, I create a new layer, choose a skin tone, and paint all skin areas. With the selection tool, I automatically select the area around, invert the selection, and paint the shapes. I create a new layer, set it as clipping mask, change blending mode to multiply, and paint the shadows. Another new clipping mask layer with a soft pink color. I add cheeks and gently warm up the skin. On a new layer, I color the eyes, feet, and tongue. On the same layer, I draw the outline of both bows in pink. And again, I use the selection tool, invert the selection, and fill the bows. New layer, multiply, clipping mask, and I paint the shadows. Now the hair. I choose a light brown color, draw the hair shape, and fill it using color drop. New layer, multiply, clipping mask, and with the brush Hair Dark, I paint the shadows. Another layer, screen, clipping mask, and with the hair light brush, I add some highlights. Back to the big bow, below the shadow layer, I add a new layer and draw large white dots. I move to the bow layer, draw the outline of the pink dress and fill it. Then I go about the dots layer and add a pattern to the dress. Here I simplify my work and use a pattern brush from my favorite patterns. Below the dress I create a new layer, draw the green sweater outline and fill it. I forgot the color, so I return to the dots layer and paint the collar and buttons. About the sweater, I create a new layer, multiply clipping mask, and draw the knitted pattern. I create another new multiply clipping mask layer for sweater shadows. I also add shadows to the pink dress. Up below the lines layer, I create a new layer and draw the cat's outline and fill it. New layer and I paint the cat's eyes and pink ears. About the cat body, I add a multiply clipping mask layer and paint the fur pattern. Another multiply clipping mask layer for pink cheeks. Below the cheeks, I create a new layer, set it to screen, and suggest soft fur texture. To speed things up, I use a pattern brush again, and at the end, I lower the opacity of this layer. Above it, I add another multiply clipping mask layer and paint the shadows. Back to the eyes layer, I draw the cat's blue bow, and above it I new multiply clipping mask for shadows. Below the shadows layer, I add a decorative stitches. Finally, let's go for the finishing details. At the very bottom, I create a new layer and paint the background using my favorite background brush, which creates a beautiful, imperfect texture. On a new layer, I add another pattern. Again, I keep it simple and use playful lines from my favorite patterns. Now I return to the frame layer. With the selection tool, I select the area around the frame, invert the selection, and fill it with white on a new layer. I move this layer down above the pattern background. Back to the frame layer. This time I select both the outside and inside of the frame, invert the selection, so only the oval is selected. On a new layer, I paint the oval. Down above the white layer, I add a new multiply clipping mask layer and paint an inner shadow. At the end, I lower the opacity to about 20%. Now I repeat the same shadow on the wall behind the picture. I notice I forgot the mouth, so I go back and fill the inside with a darker color. Back above the white frame, I add a multiply clipping mask layer and use the dust brush to add subtle texture. At the end, I lower the opacity. And here is our very last step, a quick and easy paper texture. At the very top, above all layers, I create a new layer, set it to multiply, choose black color, and paint over the whole image with paper black brush. I lower the opacity until the texture looks natural. Then I create another layer, set it to screen, choose white color and paint over the image with paper white brush. Again, I lower the opacity. And we are done. Thank you for drawing with me and have a beautiful day, guys.